Doing this for a while, got many people to succeed on this journey, okay? So that's who I am. I'm sorry for not introducing myself earlier. But now we're in chapter 1, the introduction. And like I said, page 6 has a lot of the meat, okay?
Hey, thanks for joining. You did it. Nice job. Introducing our project management trainer, speaker, author, and coach to thousands of professionals and organizations worldwide, including NASA, the U.S. Air Force, USACE, U.S. Army, the Department of Transportation, the FBI. Your friend, Phil. Over to you, Phil.
Hello, my awesome project managers. Welcome. I thought I would do a video for you guys today. Today is a very special day. I'm a year older, and I thought it would not be complete if I did not put out a video for you. So I get a lot of pleasure in giving back to my students. And today I wanted to remember especially my PMP graduates. So I interrupted the broadcast to speak to you. Those of you who have been slaving away and are now PMPs, I bow down and I give you all the necessary respects because it is such a tough exam. I had a student who just yesterday, Daryl, got certified, and honestly, that was the best present anyone could give me for today. You got no idea how elated I was. Now, with great power comes great responsibility. You are now a PMP. You know, there's a whole lot of responsibility that comes with it. The code of ethics and professional conduct and what you're supposed to do and how you're going to give back. But I want to flip that on its head, and I want to talk about your responsibility to yourself. What use is it to get PMP certified, and at the end of the day, you cannot carry out any of the core functions of being a project manager? So today, I'm going to talk to you about what you need to do to go to the next level in your project management. And to be quite honest with you, the PMP is just the beginning. It gets you into the door, but it doesn't keep you there. What keeps you in the door, in the establishment, is your ability to take all of these concepts, topics that you've read about, that you've been tested on, and practicalize it and pragmatize it. So I want to run through these very quickly. These are my rules as a practicing project manager, as someone who has been through the trenches. These are my rules, okay? The first rule is you need to understand business concepts, and you need to be very comfortable in business concepts, business and accounting, such that when you sit down with management in firms, program managers, portfolio managers, engineers, doctors, whoever they are, you feel very comfortable talking about the business. If you do not have this, it takes away from you. It takes away from your ability to have that boardroom presence, the ability to command respect, the ability to illustrate that you understand the business. If you do not have this understanding of business in general, and you shirk from accounting terms, you don't really know your net present value, you don't really understand the concept of IRR and things like that, and you don't understand the business you're in, like the entire business speak of what you're in, I don't care how many PMP letters you've got behind your name, you are going to fall flat. So if you cannot command business respect and presence in a boardroom by being in the moment, being able to banter back and forth with these business professionals, be it from the world of medicine, engineering, whatever, if you don't understand the business, that's a zero already, no matter how many PMP letters you have. So I advocate that you know the business, speak the language, and be very comfortable with finance and accounting. So if you don't feel comfortable, go for a course, do whatever you need to do, understand key accounting terms and business principles. Secondly, you need to understand the concept of a project. Now, a project, as parrot fashion, we would say, is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. That's all well and good. But do you have a holistic view of project management? Do you have that cognitive ability to see your project as being a bigger enterprise than just a single tiny endeavor? Do you see all the touch points where your project affects other projects, where your project could affect the organization in a very profound way? Are you thinking about what they talk about in this book, the benefits management plan? Are you thinking like wide about your project, or is it just a one-track mind about it? So you need to see your project in a more holistic view. You need to understand the stakeholders at play on the project. You need to understand who your stakeholders are outside of the immediate project view. You need to be all up in the business of this stuff, my friends. Now, when you have that understanding of the benefits and the holistic view of the project, when you are on the project, you're very aware of what your project and its deliverables are actually meant to do for the firm. And that gives you further propensity to get it done, further motivation to get it done, further motivation for you to bring the team along for the greater good. So you have to understand the greater good of your project. Looking for these greater goods and this wider holistic view, it only elevates you as a project manager. It only puts you at a different level. So when people act certain ways on projects, I know they don't understand the greater good and how it affects the firm, how it affects other people. So this is very, very important, because that is what takes you into the topic of integration. So when we talk about integration management and developing the charter and identifying stakeholders, this is all surrounding this holistic view. So in order to have a holistic view, you need to understand the project, you need to understand the charter, you need to understand stakeholders, and then you begin to look wider. You begin to look at complexities on the project, and you look at ways to do things better. Next thing, which is absolutely important for any PM, whether you are in the world of hybrid or predictive or agile, is scope. You need to be able to, in the best way, scope the project out. So people really, truly understand not just the requirements, but how you're going to get the requirements done. This is something you really need to think out. I remember a book by Steve Jobs that I read about. Well, someone wrote a bio about him and how he went far and wide trying to understand the scope involved in the glass plate put on top of the iPhone. And he went far and wide for this Gorilla Glass, for him to be able to find it and find a company that could make it. That's what I call scoping out to the nth degree. You have to do research. You have to get really down in the weeds to understand what are we doing and how are we going to do it, and look at all of the options and come to a conclusion of how you're going to do it. We talk about defined scope, right? Defined scope is where you take those requirements and you really know how you're going to make those requirements a reality. So I think a lot of times PMs, they just find themselves on a project, but they're not really thinking about how best can I scope this out, and then actually doing it, going all out to scope out the project, not relying on the technical people alone, but being part of the team that brings this whole thing together. Now, you do know that in the world of scope, we talk about a requirements traceability matrix. I live by those, especially on IT projects, especially when you've got multiple stakeholders. So if you're a project manager and you're a PMP, why aren't you using a requirements traceability matrix? Why? You should be using one, because it maps your requirements to the requester, whether it is a product, a service, or result. Why aren't you using one? You should. Now, after the requirements traceability matrix has been well put together, very well mapped, you've mapped requirements to their origin, who asked for it, you've mapped requirements to test scripts. If you're in the world of IT or you're testing something, test scripts don't just have to be in the world of software. You could write a test script for a product. So very solid, well thought out use cases should map to test scripts, and those should map back to the requirements. And if possible, you can map those back to WBS elements, which takes me to the next point. If you are a PMP, you've been through this whole book called the PMBOK Guide, I would expect to see requirements traceability matrix, a project scope statement, and a WBS. What stops you from creating a WBS? So go to wbstool.com. But apart from that, you could create one in PowerPoint. You could create one in Excel. You can create a WBS using Post-it notes. What is the WBS going to do for you? Oh my goodness. Where do I even start from? The WBS is one of the most powerful tools in the project manager's toolbox. And if you're not using one, I feel sorry for you, because that is professionalism that you're just throwing away. That is the meat of what you do as a project manager. You should have a WBS, whether it is 2 levels, 3 levels, 5 levels. I've worked on projects where there were 7 levels. I've worked on projects where project personnel had WBS dictionaries that were 4 times this book. There's a reason why they are used. And I'm not saying you have to go that far. This was a weapons systems project, but not every project is as far out. Some projects need a 2-level WBS to keep you straight. I want to challenge you, project manager. Why aren't you using a WBS? You know about it, and you say, oh, my PMO doesn't let me. What? Your PMO doesn't let you? That's not true. You're not using it. You should be using a WBS. Come on now. The WBS is going to help your team focus. It's going to help put everything in place. And if you are in a company where accounting is a big deal, and maybe you're even into giving status that is earned value driven, seriously, of course, you probably have a WBS. But even if you're not using earned value, it keeps everything straight. It keeps your view about the whole project. I was talking about holistic view. It helps you have a holistic view of the entire project, and you can see the entire scope of work, and you can think better about how it's going to be done. Case in point, this morning, I got a text. Well, I got a number of messages wishing me happy birthday, but I got one from an associate that I had the pleasure of being on a project with way back. So they brought my buddy Colin and I in to kick off the WBS creation and the high-level scheduling. I got a video this morning that was state of the art. Marty, I don't know if you're watching, but that video, it really gave me a lot of satisfaction, because when we put this massive WBS, this WBS had, you talk about 7 levels, this had infinity levels, because everything was all over the place. I'm talking about great minds of science coming together and trying to put the ideas together to create a state-of-the-art system in the biotechnical field that had never been done before. That would have been such a benefit to medical organizations. They brought us in to kick this off and to put this WBS together, because they've got all these ideas. Imagine these great minds. I call them the eggheads, the scientists. They've got all these great ideas. How do we put them together? That's why they brought Colin and I in. So by the time we were done, I remember showing them, hey, some people from your firm, they contributed to the PMI standard for WBS creation. You must have a WBS. And I remember them looking puzzled, like, who's this crazy guy? But by the time we were done with this WBS, whoa, even I'm not a scientist, but I know how to put ideas together in a WBS. And by the time we were done, I'm like, yes, that's it. We're on our way. And, handed it over to the resident project manager 5 years later. Oh my gosh. When I saw this video of this state-of-the-art medical, scientific, biotechnical system that they'd put together for testing, oh my gosh, what joy it brought, because it just shows you, it validates that this stuff is real. It works. Now, I can't even think of where they would be without the WBS. It was the WBS that made something click in their mind, and they began bouncing off the walls in excitement, saying, we've got it. We've got it. Our ideas are coming together. Even they knew that the WBS was the beginning of something great. So why do I tell you this? I tell you this to press upon you that some projects without a WBS, they will never get to success like this one did. This was a massive complex full of robotics, full of all sorts of concepts, medical, scientific, mechanical, all being brought into one. It was such a pleasure to watch that video, I tell you. I tell you. And those of you who are on my Phil's Bosses group, I'm going to post that video so that you can see 5 years that started with a WBS and a high-level schedule, milestone schedule of sorts, with a little bit of detail in the phases. So Colin is my schedule guy. He's my schedule guru, my Microsoft project guru. So, he took over from where the WBS ended, and boom, we came up with this high-level schedule, handed it over to the resident PM, and success. They are buzzing, and they're going to add a ton of value to the medical world. Why am I telling you all this? To illustrate to you the importance of deliberate, intentional project management. You got to be intentional, my friends. Let's not kid ourselves, okay? That everything is going to turn into adaptive. No. There will always be a place for fully plan-driven. There will always be a place for change-driven and nothing else. There will always be a place for hybridization, agile, predictive, in different titrations. So if you're a project manager and you're thinking about scope like a one-trick pony, just requirements and the WBS, I want you to expand your mind to think about how things are done in the world of agile. Where could you use a product backlog? Where could you use user stories? Where could you introduce the concepts that you see in agile? Where could you introduce concepts such as story sizing and story points, even into a hybrid model? That's why you need to know enough to be dangerous. So if you're a PMP, it's the beginning. You need to have a holistic view of project management, holistic view of your project. You need to be thinking big picture. How can I affect this organization in a more profound way than what I'm doing right now? I'm a PMP. I'm supposed to be bringing more to the table. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself. What have you done for your firm? What change, what good change have you brought to the firm? I challenge you. Have you? Are you making things happen? Is your PMO thinking differently because of you? If they're not, you're just one of the other project managers who took an exam and has a piece of paper saying PMP. You got to take it to the next level. You got to make it actionable. You got to do, my friends. What are you doing? What change are you bringing? Which home runs? I'm talking about a home run where you knock it so out of the park that people know, yes, you have arrived. So that takes me to my next topic of scheduling. Are you able to create an indelible, infallible schedule that you put it together? Yes, people might go off, but that schedule just keeps people so on track. You got it locked down. You got all those dependencies in there. You got all the logic. Can you create one of those? Or are you still saying, well, scheduling isn't for the top PM, it's for the junior PM? Seriously? You cannot build a sensible schedule in MS Project? What are you doing? What are you doing? Now, I'm not talking to everyone. Those of you who can, of course, you know you got it. Kudos, fantastic. But there are a lot of folks that don't. They don't got it. They can't put a schedule together to save their lives. I want to challenge you, folks. Find a scheduling tool. I don't care what it is. It could be Project. It could be SAP. It could be Smart Sheets. It could be PlanView, ClearView. There's so many of them these days, you almost lose track. But you do need to know scheduling. You do need to understand the principles and the logic, the dependencies, how a schedule is woven together, and how to get the most mileage from your schedule. If you're a PMP and you cannot do this, I want to encourage you, go to the next level, because you ain't at the next level. You're still on ground zero. Go to the next level. Schedules that are bulletproof, that have the logic woven in, that take into account what is happening this week, what is happening now, and update the schedule. I'll never forget a company I worked for, put this big old schedule together and got all excited about it. And the boss said, all right, Phil, you know what? Put that on the wall. Stakeholder A would like that. You mean we're not going to use this schedule to track? No. It's just to show our stakeholder that we're, actually doing what they want. He wanted a schedule. Put it on the wall. We're not going to use that. What? No, as a project manager, you should use a schedule. I don't mind it being a milestone schedule on some projects. I don't mind it being a high level schedule. Some projects, it does need to be a detailed schedule because people only work when people need to work. When do people need to work? When the milestone begins to approach a week before it actually hits. That's when people wake up and start doing stuff. You know, we talk about the student syndrome in the PMBOK guide. Have you read about the student syndrome here? They leave work to the last minute. And you've probably read about the law of expansion of work. It expands to fill the time box that you've given it. So as a project manager, you need to be aware of all these things and really build a good schedule, bulletproof, tight schedule, and you need to be the person who wants the team of milestones approaching. Now, cost is the next area you should be cognizant of. Now, I'm not going to go on the earned value trajectory. I believe everyone should be thinking of earned value. What is the value of what we've done? How much did we pay for it? And how much did we say we'll get done in this time box? That's your EV, PV, and AC, unspoken. You need to have full control over these metrics. So you've worked for 5 days. Did you get the 5 days worth of work done that you planned to within the time box? Let's not even talk about money, but did you get the work done within the time box? Yes or no? If no, your PV is off. If you got less done, your PV is off. What about AC? Did you pay more than what you planned for this piece of work? Yes or no? Okay, how are you going to recover if that's the case? That's thinking about your CPI. So as a project manager, these are things you need to be thinking about. Then we talk about quality, fitness for use, conformance to requirements, customer satisfaction, not cutting corners, being aware of how to ensure that there's quality in your deliverable. All this stuff. You see where I'm going with this? The pragmatism. So I want to challenge you, project managers, those of you that are PMPs, that have spent time, energy, effort doing this thing, you got to big it up so that when you go to a job and you speak to whoever's interviewing you, they are fully convinced that you can deliver. Now, with that said, I have a course coming up that is going to take into account the pragmatism of project management and show you how it's done, because you could read this all day long and you could still be clueless about a lot of this stuff I'm telling you. So, would you come for such a course? Let me know in the comments if you would come for such a course, because there are many other aspects we need to talk about. Now, I haven't even spoken about one of the most important pieces of being a project manager. It's people. The people piece, that is by far the most important, because you're doing the project for people, you're leading people, you're talking to people, you're dealing with stakeholders. So it is by far the most important piece. And I keep referring to page 53 in this book. I'm going to read it to you. I call this the last of the great PMBOK guides. Let me read it. It says, research shows that successful project managers consistently and effectively use certain essential skills. Research reveals that the top 2% of project managers, as designated by their bosses and peers, distinguish themselves by demonstrating superior relationship and communication skills while displaying a positive attitude. That is page 53 in the PMBOK guide. And they're not the only ones who have done this sort of research. The Stanford Research Institute did an experiment, a survey, and at the end of their research, they realized that success in business is 87.5% relationship, only 12.5% skills or product. So what does that tell you? It tells you that in order to succeed as a project manager, you really need to pay attention to how you're influencing. Influencing, John C. Maxwell says, the true measure of leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. How are you influencing those around you? Are you influencing those around you? John has another quote that's so funny. He says, he who thinketh he leadeth, or she who thinketh she leadeth, but has no one following after her or him, is only taking a walk, Many people taking walks alone. We don't want to be like that. We don't want to be like that. We don't want to be taking walks alone. We want to be influencing, as it were, without authority. So this is another area that is very important, and I am going to be teaching this area in this upcoming course for people who are meant to be project managers, but they know that they ain't got it and they need more. Would you attend such a course? I'm curious to know. Drop me a comment. Let me know if you would attend such a course, because it's one thing to get certified. It's another thing to be the best project manager you could ever be in a pragmatic sense. Not just saying I've got a PMP certificate, but by saying bring it on, bring schedule on, I'll handle it, bring scope on, I'll handle it, bring cost on. That's my job. Procurement, I can negotiate all day. Communicate, oh yes, I can do that all day long. That's 90% of my time. What about leading? Bring any team for me to lead. I will lead them without authority, without wielding the whip. I will do it. That's the job of the PM. What about quality, fitness for use, conformance to requirements? How do you get there? All of these things you should be all up in the business of. I know many of you are. So this is just like a revalidation that what you're doing is exactly what you should be doing. For some of you, it's not. And it's evidence when you go for interviews, go for interview after interview after interview, and 5 minutes into the interview, it looks like it's gone dead. Why? Because you're not bringing to the table what they're looking for. In interviews of project management, they are looking for evidence that you can do these things. You can lead, schedule, cost, scope, risk, procurement, stakeholders. You can communicate, you can lead, you can integrate. They're looking for evidence. They're looking at your body language. They're looking at you giving assurance that when you are given that position, you will bring it. They're looking for assurance that if you're given that opportunity, you are going to make it a home run. A lot of times people think it's all by what you know. No, they're looking at you, they're observing you, they're observing your body language, they're observing your poise, they're observing your comfort, they're observing how you communicate, and your body language says volumes. It speaks volumes. So all the stuff you don't know, guess where it's coming from? Guess how they are decoding that. Yeah, this person isn't very comfortable with that. It's your body language, your facial expressions, and more than anything else, your vocabulary. If you don't have the right vocabulary, if you're not hitting those major points, if you don't have that assurance in an interview, you know you ain't going to get the job. So I know I've talked about a lot tonight, but the reason why I came on was to encourage you, project managers who are PMPs, to not just be a PMP on paper, but to be a pragmatic project manager, a PPM. Flip the letters. If you really want to make it great, you got to be a PPM, a pragmatic project manager, a practical project manager. Okay? I hope this gives you some context of what to do now that you're certified. Being certified is great. I mean, I got certified, it was great, but what took me to the next level in all these interviews and got me all these six-figure jobs and got me into all sorts of companies like Motorola, like US Airways, now American, like General Dynamics, like Honeywell. What got me into those companies was my ability to convey to those interviewing me that I knew what I was doing, that I could do it, and I brought the language and the context they were looking for in the interview. You got to bring these things to the table, my friends. Don't forget, if you feel you need additional coaching, training, mentoring, and help in your project management, you need to go to pmsucceed.com and just look up in the menu somewhere there, and you're going to see coaching. So go take a look. If that's something you're interested in, reach out. Let me know. For those of you that have reached out, it has been a very, very hectic first 2 months as a result of certain projects I'm working on. But I can assure you, when these projects are finally done, these courses and these initiatives will hold in earnest. All right? Thank you very much. Those of you who were watching, I had to interrupt the broadcast. It was very important. I hope you benefited from it as well. And I will take you back to your friend Phil to keep watching more about the PMP exam. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Hello, my awesome PMPs to be. You got no idea how excited I am that you joined me on this journey today to talk about the PMBOK guide, all 756 pages of it. So I thought I should give you a neutral background, an enjoyable background, before I dunk you into the very grimy PMBOK content. So let's start off by talking about how you can succeed on the exam